Welcome to the Eat for Endurance podcast, where we explore the connection between nutrition, performance, and health for busy, active people. I'm Claire Shorenstein, a sports dietitian and endurance athlete, and in every episode, I share evidence-based guidance, inspiring athlete stories, and practical tips on a wide variety of nutrition topics so that you can feel better, crush your endurance goals, and thrive as a human being. We are back after a bit of a break with my usual content, and I'm excited to kick off my 2026 season with today's episode on exercise dependence, which is a threat to an athlete's health, well-being, and longevity. I'm chatting about this topic with Registered Dietitian Leslie Schilling, who owns a Las Vegas-based private practice specializing in nutrition counseling for disordered eating and performance nutrition. She's worked with a wide range of athletes, including Cirque du Soleil performers and NBA players. She's the author of 2 books, Born to Eat and Feed Yourself, and she supports dietitians, coaches, and other professionals working at the intersection of eating disorders and sport through professional supervision and mentorship. I heard Leslie recently give an amazing presentation on exercise dependence at the Fuel to Play conference last year, and immediately invited her on the show because I really wanted you all to learn more about this important topic. We discuss what exercise dependence is, who is most at risk, red flags that may indicate that your relationship to exercise is not a healthy one, the connection between exercise dependence and eating disorders, signs that you may be weight suppressed, what Leslie means when she says, quote, "If you feel it, you can do it," and so much more. We also walk you through a detailed questionnaire towards the end of the episode that you can take while you listen. Not if you're driving or running, obviously. So pause and save it for later. But you can take this questionnaire to see if you may be exercise dependent. So do make sure you listen until the end. Before we dive in, I want to give a shout out to my monthly nutrition membership, Fuel for Life Crew. For just $39 a month, you get access to my entire library of masterclasses and downloads, monthly live calls, and a private Slack community where you can ask me questions and connect with me, and of course with other members, about all things nutrition. There's absolutely no commitment. You can try it for a month, you can cancel anytime, or you can sign up for multiple months to get a discount. Here are a few testimonials from my recent members. Sarah says, "I joined Fuel for Life Crew and gained access to the priceless tutorials and plans, all of which I could individualize to my own needs and goals. In addition, I could reach out directly to Claire in Slack. She is responsive, thorough, and keeps things interesting and helpful. I attribute finishing training and my first full Ironman as a busy mama of 3 to fueling well thanks to Claire and the community coaching she has thoughtfully developed." And my client Jennifer says, "What a great value and a ton of research-based current information for any level of athlete. I also appreciate her awareness of disordered eating practices and beliefs in the general public and athletes. A great investment for yourself and long-term wellness." And finally, Kara says, "Amazing value. I love all the classes. The handouts are great. And I love how I'm able to ask questions and how responsive Claire is to answering." You can visit eatforendurance.com to read more testimonials and to join my crew today. All right, here is my chat with Leslie Schilling on exercise dependence. Leslie, welcome to the Eat for Endurance podcast. I'm so stoked you're here. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. Yeah,
Great.
Excited to be here.
Yeah, well, before we dive into today's topic, I always like to have the dietitians I have on here introduce themselves a little bit, especially, yourself as a dietitian, what kind of brought you into the field, and anything else you'd like to share.
Yeah. Well, I'm Leslie Schilling. The draw is from North Carolina, even though I live in Las Vegas. Grew up in North Carolina, was a super active kid. I was a competitive gymnast, did had a lot of athletic endeavors, went to school in North Carolina, Appalachian State, did my undergrad and master's there, moved to Memphis, Tennessee, where I started a job in research. I did adolescent sports nutrition research and kind of just knew I was going to end up in sports nutrition, and then realized very quickly that you can't do sports nutrition without understanding eating disorders too. And then really started a practice that specialized at the intersection of eating disorders and sports nutrition. And was in practice in Memphis, Tennessee, worked in pro sports. I've worked in the NBA. I've worked with Cirque du Soleil here in Las Vegas, where I live now, and have lived here for almost 10 years now. And written a couple books. But I grew up an athlete, wanted to be a sports dietitian, got quickly schooled by a bunch of therapists as a baby dietitian that really helped me learn and grow and unlearn some things as well, to bring me where I am today, which is a dietitian who just loves working at the intersection of sport and disordered eating and eating disorder prevention, along with helping other dietitians kind of gain experience at that intersection.
Yeah. And if any dietitians or other health professionals are listening, I know you have a fantastic group. I myself am not a member yet, but I have colleagues who are in there who speak very highly of it. So go check Leslie's group out. And I know you're an avid hiker. Is that something you've been into just since moving to Las Vegas, or have you always been a hiker? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I love hiking and I just love being out in nature. But I grew up in the central part of North Carolina, but went to school in the mountains and started hiking there. And there was not a lot of hiking in Memphis. So I can say we took a little pause when I lived there and then moved out west. And when we landed, we just started hiking. And now we have 2 seasons. We have swimming when it's hot and there's lots of snakes out. And then we have hiking when it's cooler. Usually Thanksgiving time of year is when we really kick off our hiking season and hike usually well until April, early May when it gets too hot. But yeah, love hiking. Vegas is so much more than the Strip. We hike. It's really a bowl. And so it's surrounded by mountains and they're beautiful, beautiful trails all around.
Yeah, my husband literally just got back from Vegas. He was there for a conference and he was really hoping to do a long run or a hike in Red Rocks and just didn't get a chance. But some of his relatives were there and sent me some pictures. I'm like, that looks gorgeous. I want to do that.
It really is pretty.
I've never been to Vegas, which is ridiculous being from California. But yeah, never been to Vegas. But actually, I really want to get out there. Not because of the Strip. I'm kind of, I don't know, maybe for a concert or something fun there. But I'd really just want to get to the surrounding areas. I've never been to the Grand Canyon. I mean, there's so many cool things that are not that far from Vegas. So I imagine it's a fun place to be.
Very true. It's fun. Let me know. I'll help you plan it. It's one of my favorite things.
Sweet. All right. Well, we're going to put a pin in that. I definitely want to get back to learning about your work with Cirque du Soleil because that's so fascinating to me. And maybe we can even throw in how you fuel your hiking and other adventures. But let's get into today's topic, which is all about exercise dependence. And as I was saying offline, I think this is such a good one to be talking about. This episode probably is going to be coming out in January or February sometime. So it's this time of year where, everyone has all their big goals. I mean, I'm a huge fan of setting goals year round, not waiting until January, but you know how the world works. And so, they have their training, they have their food related goals. Weight loss is just everywhere. And I think we can just get into some danger zones here. So I thought it would be really helpful to explore this topic from many different angles because I'm an endurance athlete. I'm a distance runner. A lot of my listeners are endurance athletes and, maybe even ultra endurance athletes. And, it's kind of, I feel like sometimes that line between what's too much, what is even exercise dependent is, what does that mean? So we can kind of get into all that, but maybe a good place to start is, let's establish what is exercise dependence and who is at greatest risk of developing it?
Yeah. The way I kind of ask my clients or kind of assess my clients, we can do some more clinical assessments, but, and we're going to talk about one, but the question I like to ask is if you were to need to take a day off or a week off from your movement, how would that make you feel? And if that fills you with dread or anxiety or concern or fear about how you would then eat, then that is a red flag that we need to look at. And so, for example, if you came into my office and you were like, Leslie, I work out 6 days a week or 7 days a week or all these things, the first thing we would really talk about would be, would you be open to possibly adding in a little bit more recovery time? And if that makes you really uneasy, then it's something we need to address. So it's sometimes we really need to be able to take time off. And when that is something that somebody is really hesitant to do, it needs to be investigated.
Yeah. And I think it's different from if, I don't know, I just got over a bunch of people being sick in my household, including myself. So training was out the window half the time, I'm sleep deprived, whatever. And I think it's perfectly normal and fine to be bummed out. Like movement makes me happy. I know it makes you happy, right? Being outside, moving your body. And it sucks. It sucks being injured. It sucks being sick and not, or whatever. It sucks not being able to do the things you want to do. And I think we just want to differentiate between something like that and then what you're describing. That's very different.
Yeah. And two things can be true, right? Like it can, you can miss it, it can suck, and then you still understand that I need to do it.
Yes.
It's when it misses it and it sucks, but the distress I feel from not engaging is too strong for me to say honor a doctor's orders or take recovery time. It's when the distress then causes you to maybe act out of alignment with what maybe a medical professional told you or your sports dietitian told you or recommended to you. It's when that distress keeps you engaging in an activity, even when you should take time off, like if you're sick.
Yeah.
Yeah. It can definitely suck, but we can sit in the suck and be okay.
Yeah, totally. And maybe we can bring it further, kind of establishing, okay, well, like, what are some things to look out for? And I know we're going to go through in a lot more detail to kind of determine, do an exercise that you guys can all engage in yourself. But what are some things that we might watch out for and to see if someone does have exercise dependence?
Yeah.
Like, what are the very specific, other than like the rest piece? What else are we looking at? For?
Well, I will say endurance athletes are more at risk. Just the nature of their type of training. They're at more risk. Something also is someone who is more extrinsically driven versus intrinsically driven. And that's called introjected regulation. Introjected is more when someone I'm doing this because I should. I'm doing this because like to fit in. Like, so it's really not your autonomous decision, right? And that would be identified regulation where, oh, I just love running. I love being outside. I love being with my friends. I love a good challenge. So it's like, it's really about you versus I should, or I feel like I have to. For example, someone, asked me to take them on as a client and they were like, well, I only do this type of training to manage my weight. And I was like, that's a red flag. That's a big red flag because that is introjected regulation. And that puts somebody at greater risk when, I have people who are like, well, I'm only doing this because my partner does it. And I'm like, well, that might not be the best reason for you to do it. We want you to do it because this is amazing and you love it and you love to see what your body can do. The other thing that would be a red flag too is if somebody really increases their training and they have a consistent high level of training and they're not willing to also increase the fuel that is required to do that level of training. And like I've said for years and years and years, if you feel it, you can do it. But the problem is our culture doesn't really promote adequate fueling for people, sadly. So if you feel it, you can do it, but are you really fueling it? And the problem comes too, is a lot of people feel like they've made, I'm using my air quotes, healthy changes with their nutrition, and then they end up underfueled not because necessarily on purpose for a lot of people, but just because they got some really some misinformation in our culture, which is restrictive leaning as more of a rule versus the exception.
Yeah. And that phrase, if you feel it, you can do it. I love that. I heard it in the lecture you gave, of course, at the Field to Play conference, which, by the way, again, if any dietitians are out there, great conference happening again, probably next year. But are there any caveats to that statement? Just again, thinking about like, I don't know. I mean, there's some amazing athletic feats that people do, right? All kinds of incredible stuff. When you say that, like, do you have any kind of limits in mind to that? Or I don't know. I'm curious because it's a clear statement, but in some ways I feel like there can be a little nuance to it.
Yeah. There's always it depends, right? There's always a depends or can you? Well, you can fuel a lot of things, right? But it's like, say I worked with a particular football player whose needs were somewhere between 9,000 and 10,000 calories a day. Okay, so that's a lot of fuel. At some point, the intake might itself be prohibitive for someone. And we had to do a lot of liquids. We had to do, there were so many things we had to do. And then I also had, a boxer who was doing this and training and doing trail running and doing all the things. And at some point we were like, you can't chew enough to maintain what you want to maintain all the time. So something's got to give. And so, we run into those things. And what we had to do is like, if you feel that you can do it, but we need to be honest about what you want to do, and what is what you want to do a compulsive behavior, or is it something that you get so much joy out of? And can we have these really honest conversations about, do we need to lower your amount of movement, possibly, or switch up some of your cross training to make sure your energy needs are matching your energy availability. And so was that football player willing to take in that much? Yes, they were. They were all in it,
Mm-hmm.
And people need a lot more energy than they realize, I think. So when I'm doing kind of, energy, talking about energy needs with people, and I say, if you feel it, you can do it, it really it is a challenge a lot of times. It's like, I'm saying you need probably 6,000 calories a day, or, 3,500 or 4,000 or 4,000 or what. We're talking big numbers that people don't usually believe that they need. And so then they're like, oh, I see what you're saying. Like, if I'm willing to put the effort in to fuel myself at this level, which really takes a strategy, then I can do this. And so sometimes it's a statement that's actually a challenge.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, I have clients who, and I'm sure you have clients like this as well. This is more on the recreational side, but they're super busy. They always make time for training, but nutrition is always the thing to just go out the window. Yeah. And so the first thing we work on is like, you cannot do this training if you cannot also make time for the nutrition. So either cut back the time you're spending training, or get up earlier, or we have to figure out some solution, but you cannot keep doing this. Otherwise,
and that's what I say. Yeah, that's what I say. If you feel it, you can do it. Great. Exactly. But are you willing to fuel it is really kind of the caveat there. But also, are you getting if you're, a menstruating person, are you getting your period regularly? And if you're not, then we really need to be thinking about the if you can do it part. Like, is it a good idea? Are you having hormonal issues? Are you injured? Are you a person who's weight suppressed, which is living in a body that's probably at a lower weight than where it really needs to be because of your training and under fueling? A lot of people don't realize that. Yeah. Are you suffering from depression or anxiety, or do you have a diagnosis of OCD? Do you have also a co-occurring eating disorder? And I think there are people that are walking around out there that are engaging in some really disordered behaviors and don't realize that there might be something clinical or pathological there going on too. Or is someone, engaging in stimulant use, or maybe have some type of alcohol and drug addiction. So of course there's definitely a caveat, but I also really think that phrase came to be as a challenge to help people see you need more than you think you need to do what you want to do.
Yeah. And one thing I want to explore a little bit more, we're talking about should versus want, like, oh, I just love to do this. And while, yes, that's amazing. Just like with food. Oh, this food's so delicious. I enjoy every bite I put in my mouth. That's not reality sometimes, right? Like sometimes we just we eat what's in front of us. We just kind of move on with our life. Maybe it's not even the tastiest thing, but we need food. And I feel like sometimes, I mean, I don't enjoy every single workout I do. That's just the reality. But I know that I will feel better if I move in some way. And I'm not sick and I'm not injured and like all the things, right? Like I know that I will just feel better. And today is a perfect example. I was like on the bike doing some half-assed workout for 45 minutes, but still I like moved and wasn't sitting all day. You know what I mean? So, and then I think about other people who maybe they're not even training for a race, but they're just recreationally active to support health, because we know that cardiovascular exercise, strength training, I mean, these things are important. So how do you address those things where, I mean, I guess it's like a question of what is your motivator? Like, what's your why? So, it might depend on, okay, I'm not doing this, to control, I don't know. I mean, actually, I'll just give you the question. Yeah. How do you address those things?
Well, intention matters, right?
Yeah.
For example, I have a client who exercise in their lifetime was used as punishment. So it makes sense that this person does not like to use movement, but it also makes sense that it makes them feel better afterwards.
Yeah.
So it really has to be intention, and it really needs to be value aligned. And if someone is doing it as a should, then we haven't figured out how it's aligned to their values. And for example, let's say this person, that their mental health has been suffering and their value is to really protect their mental health. And it's like you see these reels of people like, I'm going on a stupid mental health walk and I hate it and I'm going, but I'm doing it anyway. And so we really have to think about the intention. And if the intention is, I will feel better after this, and I will sleep better. And it was a really good transition from my very stressful workday into my evening with my family. Then we make a value aligned decisions and a decision there. And the value aligned decision is identified regulation. It's based on choice, but it's also helping people work with a choice that is aligned with they get to make the choice, not like, I have to do this because somebody told me to. But we also talk about that too. Like if your doctor or your dietitian or someone said, hey, let's engage in movement, and they might not want to do that. Well, we also have really interesting views of what that would look like. Like I have one client that's like, yeah, I'll go to the gym for like an hour and a half and I'll do it like once a week because I hate it. And I'm like, well, why are you going to, let's not do that. If you hate it, let's do something you actually like. And also it doesn't have to be in these big bites. It can be in little bites. Can you go for, if you have a treadmill in your place, this person does. I'm like, why don't you go for a walk after lunch as a nice little transition, or once you shut your laptop for the day, or watch a show and while you're doing something. And so, and that it helps us get into a routine that we might not love, or we feel like we should. And what we've done is we've changed the should to, I could do this for self-care. And if I can reframe it in a way, and listen, there are a lot of people who aren't going to get there. They're never going to love movement in this way because it's been used in a way that has not been a self-care kind of way their whole lives, punishment and lots of different things. But they want to do it. And if you want to do it, then we figure out a way to make it tolerable and valuable to you. And then the caveat is, but will you take the granola bar on your walk? Will you also be fueled to do this? Because like you said, people are willing sometimes to go do the training, but they're not willing to put the fuel into the training. And I can say, and I'm sure this is true for your clients too, and that works for a minute, works until it doesn't. Mm-hmm. And what we don't want to happen is for that, it works until it doesn't, be a sport ending injury, which does happen to people, or a hormone imbalance, or depression and anxiety, or all the things that come along with being underfed and underfueled, and which is easy to do in a culture that tells you less is more, when less is just really less.
Yeah.
So it's intention. And then also like helping people realize like, well, we can shift how you feel about that to make it be something that does feel more autonomous. Like I'm choosing this, even though I don't love it. Like sometimes I have to choose to put my hiney in the bed when I do want to watch another show, but I'm choosing my sleep hygiene over, I really want to find out what happened, So like those are like our grown-up choices we have to make sometimes. Yeah.
Adulting is hard.
It is.
So you kind of went over, basically, like you just listed some of the consequences of exercise dependence, especially when you're not fueling adequately. Would you say as part of like defining exercise dependence, does that necessarily go with underfueling, or are there instances of exercise dependence where someone is adequately fueled?
I think there's both. I think an adequately fueled compulsive exerciser is more rare. Yeah. I think it's, they're out there. They're not in my office, but I do think they're out there. But I think we tend to see, it's kind of like peanut butter and jelly. And that's what the evidence suggests as well, is that, a lot of people that are suffering from compulsive exercise, or that drive, the rigid and extreme drive to move, like that, also suffer from some underfueling and even disordered eating.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, red flags, are there any red flags that we haven't covered or mentioned yet that you think we should bring up so people are aware?
I do have some other, I think if you are a person who, does have a tendency to be extrinsically motivated, like if you know that about yourself, it'd be something to just kind of check in, like, wait, what is my intention here? And being able to really talk about intention. Someone who is, you find yourself easily led to compulsive or rigid behaviors. Like some, we know these things about ourselves. Sometimes we do. And if we do, it's like, oh, I need to check on that. I need to be careful about that. If you're, and we're kind of flipping here, chicken or the egg or the chicken. If you have a history of an eating disorder, exercise dependence tends to be seen quite frequently in eating disorders too. And so something to think about. I will work with athletes who will come to me and say, I have a history of an eating disorder. And when we do a more thorough evaluation, what we're finding is that they're still experiencing disordered eating and even a pathological eating disorder still. But they got caught up in their sport and they're fueling more than they were, but it's still not enough. And
that was my experience.
Yeah,
that was my personal experience for sure. Because I had an eating disorder on and off in high school and into college.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely was never exercising for the quote right reasons. It was always like as a means to manage anxiety, control weight, all of that. And not to say that, obviously movement is good for mental health, but it was the way I was using it was an abusive way of using exercise, I think. And, I would miss a day I remember my early 20s. If I missed a day, panic. I would be panicked if I didn't have access to a gym. I was in the gym every day. It didn't matter what was happening. I dragged my hungover ass into the gym in the morning and would, quote, sweat it out because, that's what we do. And you're,
same.
early 20s. Yep. Sweating it out. And, I just have these memories of, I remember like my family goes to Hawaii sometimes because we live in California, so it's an easy flight. And I remember the condo where we stayed didn't have access to a gym, and I would this is crazy, but we literally would go to a beach in Wailea where all the major hotels were there. I would sneak into a hotel gym that I did not stay there. I would sneak into the gym and use their elliptical to use that. And I also would drive across the island, spend hours to go to a gym that I belonged to on my vacation. This is not healthy behavior.
Right.
And then what's interesting is just what you said. Okay, you get into your sport, you're fueling more, and as I became a runner, I was like, oh, I'm learning more about nutrition. I think I'm doing better. And it became more like not actual clinical eating disorder, but disordered eating and almost unintentional because I was running and I wanted to fuel myself, but I didn't know how. And also I have this distinct memory of we knew a hurricane was coming and the hurricane had started and there was flooding. And I was like, I'm going to go for a run because I need to get my run in. Like, who does that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So if anyone's struggling with this stuff, I just want you to know, I did too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I did too in college. From the talk that I gave too, I failed a test because I skipped the study group to go continue, keep up with my workout partner. And that was my aha moment of wait, I value being a good student. I value learning. And I just really acted outside of what I value and had a lot of people reality check me too.
So what I used to do in college is I would, I knew I needed to study or get work done. I had a ton of reading, but I also needed to get my workout in. And I would literally be on the Stairmaster with my books books trying to highlight things and read, but I never learned anything or absorbed stuff. I mean, come on, give me a break. That's like being in college and it's a nice day and you take your homework outside and say you're going to do stuff. You're not going to do shit.
No, that's like I always took my backpack home for a weekend if I went home, and I never opened it.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, who are we kidding? Anyway, okay. So, I mean, we kind of covered the disorder. Oh, I know what I want to talk. I want to dig into the weight suppression piece. I think it's a really interesting one to discuss a bit more, because I think a lot of people, I definitely get this in my practice, people are just so used to being a certain weight. And because they've been at that weight for so long, they think that's their normal weight. And it's hard to show them that this is not necessarily the weight that your body is healthy at or meant to be at. It can become particularly difficult because not everyone loses their period,
True.
So if a woman doesn't lose her period and you're trying, so I don't know, I'm wondering if we want to kind of dig into weight suppression a bit more. And also what happens when you do start eating more, because obviously it can be hard for people to see their weight changing, even though they're experiencing the benefits of being better fed.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'd say, so many of my clients and their, respective sports or recreational movement have been weight suppressed, and they could be weight suppressed at a lower weight. They could be weight suppressed at a higher weight. Like it doesn't it can be across the weight spectrum. And so, I'll ask people like, what's your usual adult body weight? Sometimes we'll ask those questions. Do you ever, does your weight usually stay stable? Is it up or is it down? Whatever. And if somebody's like, oh yeah, I've been this way, as an adult, or since I've been running, I've been this way. And a lot of times if you get that, part of a statement of since then, it's always been here. Sometimes that tells us that like this could be some weight suppression. The other thing is if you're like, oh, I was this in college and young adult, and now I'm, I don't know, 25, 30 pounds less or 10 or 5, whatever it is. And you're hanging out here. My spidey sense is already like figuring out the next question I'm going to ask. And I'm like, and that's usually like getting a feel for what's your training load and what is your typical intake. And if it's imbalanced, let's say your typical intake is, a couple thousand calories and it needs to be a couple thousand more, then it's pretty likely you're weight suppressed. And that can, prolonged underfueling for a lot of people means that we could be weight suppressed across the body weight spectrum. So you've got people who, and I'm using my air quotes, or weight normative, like are in what we would call normal, which is not normal. I'm using my air quotes. It's just for you, right? Like nobody is saying you're too thin and nobody's telling you to lose weight. You just you fall into that place. And that there's weight bias and stigma there too, that that'd take 3 days. We could talk about that. But there's that too. But if you're telling me I'm chronically underfueling, then I'm thinking you're likely weight suppressed. So let's say you're an athlete and you weigh 155 or whatever, and you're not eating and you're training this much, and I'm going to start feeding you, the chances of you gaining weight are pretty good. But that doesn't make it wrong. It makes it really hard because you're like, but this is where I've been and my clothes fit here. And I'm like, and you are very underfed. And my job as a sports dietitian is to feed you consistently and optimally. And that doesn't mean that doesn't include staying here in an underfed state. And yes, you could gain weight. You could. And I can't predict how much or if any at all, but I can tell you, for me to do my job to feed you optimally and consistently, it's very possible that your weight will change. And I understand so much that that's going to be really uncomfortable and it's going to be challenging and people might talk about it. And that's so incredibly rude that grown people talk about other people's bodies, but that's the culture that we live in. And so I set the expectation that something can be hard and also really necessary to move towards a safer place. But yeah, weight suppression. I mean, if we know someone's underfueling and they're overtraining, it's very likely that they're weight suppressed.
Yeah. I think it's also really hard. And I wonder if you get these clients too, who, when you get someone who's coming to you having gained weight. So they're
Right.
saying, oh my goodness, I've gained 10, 20 pounds, whatever it is. I've gained this, I've gained weight, usually middle-aged men, women, especially women. I've gained weight. And then you look at their training and their intake and you're like, geez, like you are not fueling adequately. And then trying to explain to them, you need to eat more. And that does not land well.
Yeah, because they're
So I'm wondering if you
already
can speak to
scared,
that.
right? Because they're already
Hmm.
scared because they already gained weight.
Yeah.
Well, and a lot of times I explain this, like how the body works. And like the body doesn't know the difference between famine and dieting. And let me tell you how wise your body is. Your body is so wise that it will lay down some storage for the famine that it is now preparing for because it has not had adequate nutrition. And so that we can have body comp changes from underfueling as well. Negative body. Initially some people might have a positive, but ultimately long-term underfueling can lead to body comp shifts that can cause weight gain. And so we talk about that, but I also really just sit with people in the suck of there's grief involved in being in a body that you didn't envision yourself being in. But that doesn't make it wrong. It makes it hard. Body grief is really hard. And we talk about like aging too. Like I'm not as young as I was in college,
Yep.
and like bodies change. So I think just really normalizing the grief that comes along with body change, and it can make you sad. It can make you have to deal with comments from other people, which is a whole different irritating thing that grown-ups do that. It's really hard, but it doesn't make it wrong. And I say that all the time. I'm like, hard doesn't make it wrong. Hard makes it really hard. And I'm going to sit with you in the suck of this and remind you that fueling your body appropriately is never the wrong choice. And you might gain weight. You might not. You might gain weight. You might lose weight. You might stable out. You might have a little weight. I mean, we don't know. We can't predict it. But it's also, we're sitting across from this person that has this years of body history and diet history, and every single person is different. And so we don't know what a body's going to do other than what the body shows us it will do when it's well fed. But I remind dietitians too, it's like our job is to feed someone or help promote feeding someone, optimally, consistently, with pleasure, hopefully with intuition and intelligence. And that doesn't include, underfueling. And so we do have these hard weight conversations. And in those weight conversations, we have to be really honest about what our culture is like. And our culture is really hard. Like it is really hard for bodies to change and not be noticed one way or another. And, to go buy a larger size of jeans or workout clothes or running shorts or whatever it might be, we've been programmed to think that is wrong, when it's actually quite normal to do that. Like I am not the same size athlete I was when I was a college student. Has body change in my life been hard? Yeah, because I live in diet culture too, but it doesn't make it wrong. And it aligns with my values to not chase something that is dangerous for me. Having experienced some, exercise dependence in my younger years. And so the other thing I like to do for some of my younger athletes, and younger meaning like less than 30, is to actually get out a blank growth chart, which, and show people that the growth charts go to 20 and they never drop. If we had a growth chart that took us into our 70s,
yeah,
the goal is not to drop. So, we don't want to we don't want to lose these significant amounts of weight, because that's usually a sign of being unwell. And so sometimes I show my younger, and if they actually know or have access to a growth chart, I can say like, hey, you've always been on the 75th percentile, and you've been, you were in at the 50th or the 25th now, like that shows weight suppression. And like your sweet spot is going to be like, this will be your bottom line for your whole adult life as long as you're well. And so it depends on the age, but I also use that example for older people too, of like, hey, like, it's not normal to have these big dips down in our lifetime. That's usually indicative of something like sickness or being unwell. So
yeah, that's a great way to think about it, because I have two young daughters, and yeah, we go for the well visits, and you always look at the growth charts, and you want to stay on your curve. You don't want to fall off your curve.
Yeah. And there's seasons, right? Yeah.
I mean, I imagine there may be cases where someone is incredibly sedentary, living an incredibly unhealthy lifestyle, not eating nutrient dense foods, and then they change. Like, then we might expect a bit of a change there. But for the bulk of people, I think that
yeah, and that's a really good distinction too. Is like, I'm not helping people chase weight loss, but if it happens when they're engaging in some type of health behavior, say they started going to bed and getting better sleep, and that's all, or they started eating regularly, or they started eating more. So it's like, we're not anti your body does what it does. Where it's like, I'm not going to help somebody chase a number, because that is very dangerous ultimately. But what I'll help you do is like, let's look at your behaviors. Let's see how we can fuel you better. And if your weight changes, or doesn't, then we take those health behaviors as like, those are the things we really want to work on. Because weight is not a behavior,
Yeah.
We're in the business of helping people with behaviors, and weight is not a behavior. Weight does what it wants to do. I think as most adults actually can understand.
Yeah.
I have some clients that are like, it doesn't matter what I do, I stay right here. I'm like, well, that's your body protecting you.
Yeah. Hey, friends, it's January, and I know many of you have some big goals for the new year. I wanted to let you know that I still have a few spots open in my 3 and 6 month one-to-one coaching programs to start later this month. I only accept a limited number of clients to ensure every person receives individualized attention and depth of support that is required to create lasting, meaningful change. I have tons of testimonials on my website if you're curious what my past clients have to say about our work together. And actually, I want to read a client testimonial I got from a marathon runner I worked with last year. Zhao said, "Claire's amazing. We worked together for 4 months during the build-up to a race, and I couldn't be happier with how it all went. Claire helped me with all of my nutrition issues and needs, coached me through how to approach my diet in a more positive and healthy way, and was always available to chat and answer my questions. I would 100% recommend folks do the monthly one-to-one program. It's definitely worth it." Keep in mind, you do not need to be training for a race to work with me. I work with a wide variety of active people on all kinds of nutrition issues. And actually, I just recorded a bonus episode about a week ago. That's when it was released, going into all the details of what it's actually like to work with a sports dietitian like me. So do give that a listen if you're curious. My one-to-one spots are filling up fast, so head on over to the services page of eatforendurance.com to fill out a new client inquiry form if you're interested, and I can get you on my schedule ASAP for a free discovery call. All right, let's get back to the episode. I am curious, though, because I know you've worked with a lot of professional athletes, and you mentioned that your background is as a gymnast. You work with Cirque du Soleil performers. I imagine that, we can't completely discount body composition when it comes to high levels of sport. So I'm curious if in your practice and how you work with other dietitians and everything, how you address body recomposition or working on body comp in any way. And if that's something you ever work on. You said you don't work on weight loss, and it's very nuanced. Body composition, like obviously it is losing fat usually. Like we're usually not trying to lose muscle, right? So it is it's almost used synonymously sometimes, weight loss, body recomp. But yeah, I'm kind of curious how you approach this, if it's something you work on with certain athletes in your practice, how you teach that to, people in your group.
Well, the first thing I like to do is remind athletes that, your body comp or weight is really one small part of sport. And there are 40 plus variables to being a good athlete.
Exactly.
One or two are weight related. And it also depends on the sport. Like I work with professionals who we talk about weight sometimes. And we're talking about weight in terms of, this is where like I've eaten plenty of humble pie here when I'm like, I don't want to, we're not going to talk about this weight. But we have to, because if someone is in a harness and they have a rigger on the other side that is weighted to hold someone who weighs 155 pounds, and we have big shifts in that, then we have safety issue.
Yeah.
And so those are things that like we'll talk about. But generally, I am really upfront with people about your best shot at the best body comp is coming from a fed body. And I lead with that as my philosophy. If you are fed adequately, and consistently, your body has the best shot to be at its genetics sweet spot. And that like everybody has different, like a predetermined body comp. And it's not a chart, as much as people would love to just look at it on a chart. Some low body fats are not feasible for some people without being really, really unwell. And then, you've got people who do have those bodies that are like, it doesn't matter what I do, I'm always right here. And those people too are like, but that's because your body seems to be super protective of this kind of genetically appropriate weight for you. And so, yeah, we talk about those things. I've also had people very, very harmed by coaching comments, as you would imagine. Or told they had to weigh a certain number. And if that is your livelihood, then we talk about, I've had people who have to walk away from contracts because it's so harmful to their health, and they can and they choose to. And then I've had people that were just really, really careful about, please, let's make sure you're as fed as possible. It's like a harm reducing approach. I'll have somebody who's like, I just have to make it 3 more months on my contract. And I'm like, and then we talk about informed consent and like what we're doing can hurt you. What we are doing can make you at greater risk for developing an eating disorder if they don't already have one. And I'm just really honest with the harm that comes from chasing some of these things down the road. And I think that informed consent is the biggest piece. But most of the people I'm working with are working with me to feel better and to feel better. And we're real honest that weight might change and it usually won't go down.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have these conversations with my athletes too. And again, I mostly work with recreational folks. But, like I've had a couple, like 2 clients come to mind right now who came to me very underfed, and we fixed that issue. Everything's improving, but they have a lot. These 2 clients happen to be men, but a lot more fat in their abdomen, and it's really, really uncomfortable and really bothering them. And it hasn't been that long, so I'm saying, hey, let's give it some time. Let's just see, as you said, let's see where your body lands. And we're still working on things, but it can just be really hard for people to get past that.
Yeah,
and they've changed this. This is great, but they're just so uncomfortable with this body.
Yeah, and then we have to talk about a lot of bodies, let's say most bodies, don't necessarily have the body composition that you see, right? Yes. Like, so many, people who are fueling well and performing well don't necessarily have super visible abs. So we have all these ideas that are somewhat disordered in our culture about what we should look like. But also, as someone is moving from an underfed state to a fed state, we will have some body composition changes that are really can be really uncomfortable. And I think setting that expectation, like you are uncomfortable, it doesn't make it wrong. But also, there's if we're recovering that kind of genetically predisposed kind of body weight and body fat percent that a body wants, like your body has to recover that before it actually gets to recover a lot of your muscle mass. And so we talk about that metabolically, like a lot of it is uncomfortable. And it's also kind of part of this really uncomfortable process that we have to go through. But again, it's hard, but it doesn't make it wrong. And like,
And it
we
takes
really,
time.
and it takes time, and it really takes time. And, it's like you work with people in injury too. It's like, they're like, oh, I'm not training, so I have to cut back. I'm like, please don't. We're going to
Yeah,
end
oh
up in
God,
so
yeah.
much trouble if you do. I'd rather you go in like shooting a little higher so you
Do you
have
know what
enough energy
happens?
to recovery.
Yeah. You know what happens to
To
me all
recover.
the time? They're like we're working together, they're like, "Oh, I'm injured. I think can we just like not meet until I'm back to running again or back to cycling, whatever?" I'm like, "No, no, no, no. We need to meet more now that you're injured."
Yeah. Yeah.
Even more than before to make sure you're okay. They have this kind of idea that I'm somehow only helpful if they're like active. And I'm like, that's not like dietitians play a very important role in
Yeah,
helping
because we don't
during
want you
recovery.
like restricting, and that's
Yeah,
really,
yeah,
people get in trouble, and then they take longer to
yeah.
recovery, or then they come back and get another injury. It's yes. So I'm like, and then we forget that when we're not training, your body is still has a high energy need for recovery, and so it's just, yes, you need your dietitian when you're, when you're doing that.
The other kind of question, kind of going back to some of our discussion earlier about rest days, like taking planned rest days. Are there any instances, and again, I'm thinking of kind of higher level athletes or ultra endurance athletes, where it's acceptable, you feel, to not take a rest day, or what do you even categorize as a rest day? Because actually, so it's a two-part question. So number one, is there ever any circumstance where exercising every day is acceptable? I think the answer is no there. But number two, what would you consider a rest day? Because I'm sure you've encountered people who go for insanely long walks or do something on their quote unquote rest day. So you don't necessarily need to be totally inactive, but
Right.
where do you draw the line with
Yeah.
activity?
And I think that goes back to intention.
Mm.
Like, if you are going to do something on your rest day because you have ants in your pants and you can't just sit there, then that's something like, okay, then you have a lot of, it seems like, anxiety kind of brewing because of this recovery day that we have planned. And then, sometimes I'll do a little education around what is your body actually doing on a rest day? Because people think it's like you're just a lump and you're not doing it. And like, no, your body is still working. It's recovering. It is part of your training plan. So we talk about the reasons for it and the benefits, but I think when people actually start taking rest days or planned rest days, where it might be a light walk, it might be mowing the grass. For some people, it might not be that at all because they're training is so heavy otherwise. I think it depends on the person. But then I think a lot of people really start seeing the performance benefits from having some of that rest, and then find the value in, oh, okay, I'm going to protect this time as rest because it's also for me to catch up with energy balance too. Some people, their rest is the only way we can actually get energy balance over time. So I do think there are people that will have periods of time where they don't take days off. And that would be another time when we're talking about informed consent. It's like, this is not ideal, but you are in, a training camp right now that requires this of you. So we're going to be really, really careful with our nutrition heading into it, during, and then we're going to take some rest after. And I think, we have people who have seasons. Like, it's not recommended. I never recommend it in my practice. But there are people who might have to do that type of work. And then, I think it's that intention behind the rest days. If somebody's like, I'm going to go for a hike with my friend and it's only 7 miles and 2,000 feet ascent. I'm like, no.
Yeah,
No.
yeah. And when you gave your talk in the conference, someone had asked about like Ironman athletes, and I feel like that's such a perfect example of people who frequently don't take rest days because it's hard to get training for three sports in, especially when you're busy and you have a lot going on as a recreational athlete. And so like your quote unquote rest day is like a quote easy swim or easy whatever,
Right.
and it's like, well, that's not a rest day.
No, it's not. And you do, and there are people, and that's when it's like, this is not ideal. And how do we make this harm reducing? It's like, where can we fit in more rest during the week? How are we making sure we're staying fed? Do you understand this is a season that is not ideal?
Yeah.
So it's like, I try my best to make sure people have, like, I call them lay around days. Like, this is Netflix day or whatever. So they understand the level of rest that is appropriate if that's available to them. If you want to just rest, please do that. Your body really needs the recovery time, but also, like, that's not available to everybody. So it's like you're taking your kids to the zoo and that was like 5 miles.
I was just going to mention, like, I feel like at home, I mean, there are some days where, we might be sedentary, but I feel like at home, I'm rarely just sitting. Like, I'm running around. My house has stairs. I'm up and down the stairs. My
Yep.
kids need this and that. We're schlepping them all over. All the household stuff needs to be done, and it's like, oh my goodness, I was actually very active today.
Yeah. And helping people realize that is important too. I think helping people realize that, like, you're really never at rest. So not putting your training in today is the best we can do. Please do that. Because if you get to the end of the day and your tracker told you had 25 flights of stairs and you had, you did all these things, not that we need trackers. That's a whole nother thing. We got to be careful with, but, helping people understand that you move more than you think you move for a lot of people. I'm the same. I'm like, I sit down at night.
Yeah, it's like almost hard for me to sit down sometimes, because then it's like, oh crap, I need to do this, I need to get that. But yeah, so all good things to keep in mind. I mean, that's what I do. Like, whenever I'm working with someone, like, yes, I ask what their typical exercise routine, but I also ask, but how else do you move throughout the day? Are you walking dogs? Are you commuting to work? Like, what else is going on for you? Because even a quote rest day might not be very restful.
Right. Or say you've got like a person who's like, working, or a student on a campus, and they walk a lot and they do stairs and they're carrying a 20-pound backpack or all these things. So and I think so many of our athletes don't consider themselves athletes or active people, but something I like to remind people of is that if you have a body in motion, you have a body at risk. And it doesn't matter how much or little you're doing. If a body in motion is a body at risk for underfueling, and possibly, compulsive movement if you feel like you always have to be doing something. Yeah.
Yeah. And so now I think is a great time for us to go through this questionnaire. So you did this questionnaire in your talk at the Fuel for Play conference. I loved it because we all were able to interact and do it on ourselves. And it's a series of 9 questions. And so, Leslie, you're going to walk us through all this. Listeners, if you're driving or running, like, revisit this with a pencil later. But I really think it would be a great, great activity for everyone listening to just answer these questions, tally up the results, and Leslie, you're going to guide us through. So all yours.
So I'm going to take you through this one. And this one is really from the addiction space. There are lots of different compulsive exercise and maladaptive exercise measures and assessments out there. But this one is strictly, how do I feel about exercise? And it's the Expanded Exercise Addiction Inventory. It's the EAI-3. And I'm going to take you through a series of 9 questions and you answer them based on a Likert scale. And that would be from 1 to 6, where 1 is strongly disagree and 6 is strongly agree. And you've got 3 that would be on the disagree side. And then you've got 3 that would be varying levels of agreement. So from 1 to 6, where 1 is strongly disagree and 6 is strongly agree. And so we're going to go through these questions, and you're going to just write down that number from the Likert scale, or just put it in your notes in your phone so you can tally it later, 1 through 9. And then we're going to talk about what that measure means at the end. So the first one is, exercise is the most important thing in my life. On a scale of 1 to 6, where 1 is strongly disagree and 6 is strongly agree, where do you fall? Exercise is the most important thing in my life. Okay, question number 2, or statement number 2. Concerns have arisen between me and my family and or my partner about the amount of exercise I do. On a scale of 1 to 6. I can tell you in college, this is what got me. This would have definitely been a 6 in college. That would have been a strongly agree for me. So that concerns have arisen between me and my family and or my partner about the amount of exercise I do. That was number 2. Number 3, I use exercise as a way of changing my mood. For example, to get a buzz, or to escape. A scale of 1 to 6.
I feel like a lot of people are going to score higher on that one.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of people use it that way. It doesn't necessarily make it pathological. Like what we were talking, like it makes, if I don't want to say something ugly, a walk is a better choice. I use exercise as a way of changing my mood. The problem comes when it's our only option, right?
Yes.
When that's our only coping skill. All right, 4. Over time, I have increased the amount of exercise I do in a day. On a scale of 1 to 6, where 1 would be strongly disagree and 6 would be strongly agree. Over time, I have increased the amount of exercise I do in a day.
That one could be tricky because if you're in a training cycle, you're obviously increasing how much you do in a day. But
5. If I have to miss an exercise session, I feel moody or irritable. I think we know where a lot of people will fall on that. Number 5, if I have to miss an exercise session, I feel moody and irritable. 1 to 6. Okay. 6. If I cut down the amount of exercise I do and then start again, I always end up exercising as often as I did before. Read that one more time. 6. If I cut down the amount of exercise I do and then start again, I always end up exercising as often as I did before. On a scale of 1 to 6, where 1 is strongly disagree and 6 is strongly agree. 7. I feel guilty if I miss planned training or if my training does not go as well as planned. Read that one more time. I feel guilty if I miss planned training or if my training does not go as well as planned. Number 8. I am inclined to train when or before completely recovered from illness or injury. Number 8. I am inclined to train when or before completely recovered from illness or injury. On a scale of 1 to 6. Number 9, the final question. I have had physical, psychological, and or other issues due to my exercise regimen. I have had physical, psychological, and or other issues due to my exercise regimen. On a scale from 1 to 6, where 1 is strongly disagree and 6 is strongly agree. Okay. And so when you have time, tally that all up. And I can tell you that a score greater than or equal to 34 suggests a predisposition for exercise addiction or that compulsive exercise. And that would be something that you might want to get some support around. And so a score of greater than or equal to 34 suggests a predisposition of exercise addiction. And I can tell you mine.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, like, my college score, I scored a 46. So I scored myself for when I was in college, and it was clearly in need of support.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, my kind of now, because like some of these things really did score higher than other things, is a 15. So it's like nobody expects a 0 or a 6, right? Because like, especially if you're a person who really enjoys movement, and finds value in it. So it's like, you can see how we can go from periods in our life where we really had some compulsive behaviors around movement. They're above the 34 mark, where mine was 46 in college.
Yeah.
I mean, I went back through laughing like, wow, I was, that was really, but I had a lot of people like hold me accountable there and help me like align with my values and get some support around that. And now it's like in a much more pleasurable, joyful, movement kind of place. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I scored 19 when you did it in the conference. And yes, similarly, I'm sure I would have been all up in there
I was like, what's the highest score? I
20
was
years
almost
ago.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably would have been close to that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think anyone who's listening, I think this is a great exercise just to kind of take you through and get you thinking about things. And, as I said, some of those questions, yeah, maybe they're not so much pathological if, like, let's say you normally train 5 days a week and then you were sick and you stopped and then you got back up to 5 days a week, like that could be a perfectly normal thing and you do it in a healthy
Mhm.
way and whatever, or you're in a training cycle, your training is building, or
Mhm.
I don't know. So there are lots of things where it's like, yeah, maybe you did score a little bit higher. Like, yeah, I'm bummed out. Again, I'm bummed out if I miss a workout, but it doesn't like destroy my day and
Right.
I'm like distraught and
Yeah.
whatever. So
But
there's a difference.
you know what? You did bring up a really, really good point, and I use this to help people to, figure out if their eating is problematic as well too. Is like,
Mm,
how is your vacation eating or movement significantly different?
mm,
It's like when I say, "Hey, we're going on a vacation, yay!" Like I love to vacay, or just travel and do fun things, right? But if I'm super worried about how I'm going to get my movement in or my training in or all of these things when I'm on vacation, that is usually something that we need to address. It tells us. Or if somebody's like, I eat significantly different on a vacation than I do in my day-to-day life, that tells me that we might not have as much food freedom in our day-to-day lives as we
yeah.
need. We need some challenging there. So sometimes that vacation as a litmus test can be really helpful too. When you're expected to rest, is it really hard for you?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And like as someone that like my idea of a perfect vacation from like a movement standpoint is like a combination of like relax and chill and like adventure. So,
100%.
which
Same
I'm
thing.
sure you are too as someone who enjoys hiking. Like I love to put on my running shoes or whatever hiking shoes and like just like explore on foot. It's like such a great way to see a place. But it's very different from when I was in my early 20s and I was like breaking into hotel gyms or driving across the island to go to a freaking gym. No, seriously, I was literally, I kid you not, in the Four Seasons gym in Wailea. Anyone who's been to Wailea, it's actually a gorgeous gym. It like actually, yeah, it was the one. There are all these machines that like literally look out in the ocean. I'm like, oh, this is lovely. I mean, but again, like this is so
Yeah.
ridiculous.
but
There's a
also,
kids there.
yeah, yeah, and that's a really good example. But there's also like I was fortunate enough to go on a really fun vacation this summer, and they had a really cool gym that was like right over the ocean, and it's so pretty. And so like, but that's I got up, and it was if that's your like I'm gonna take 30 minutes, 45 minutes in this gym to check out what they have and do some stretching, maybe do whatever, grab some breakfast. And if that's your time, like I am a person who has ritual in the morning and like I like to have my coffee. I'd like for people to still be asleep. So if like if you also, think about it's not necessarily a bad thing for you to keep a ritual either,
Yeah.
as long as you're fed and we're not using it compulsively. There's also like, and I didn't do that every day. Like 2 of my days out of that week, we did that. Other times we did adventure. And so,
Totally.
yeah, so it's like, it's also, again, like think back to the intention and why am I doing this? If you're like, I'm going to scream at my kid, then go to the gym,
Yeah. Yeah, mine's like for me now it's my trains, I mean how I exercise is just all over the place with my kids, but yeah, I'll just go for a beach walk. Like that to me is just like clear my head, look for
Yep.
some sea glass, like this be present, like I don't have all my kids nearby. It's nice. So yeah, no, I agree. And again, the messaging isn't you can't use the hotel gym. Of course you can. Of course you can be active. I love being active when I'm on vacation, but it's the rigidity and
Yeah.
lack of flexibility that's where the problem lies.
Yeah.
So,
And the breaking in.
yeah. And so I think just to kind of wrap, yeah, and don't do that. I will admit I sometimes jump in the hotel pool still.
Well, I mean,
Don't tell.
they're really nice. They're really nice.
They're really nice. I'll go on my little walk on the Wailea path. I'll be like, it's really hot. I'm just gonna like jump in the pool at the Andaz for 2 seconds. No one will
I
mind.
think that's fine. I think that's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. It's okay. Not using their gym though. So yeah, I don't think I've ever told anyone about that, by the way. So confessions of a former gymaholic. I don't know how we want to call this. Pretty much gym rat, whatever. Yeah, so I want to wrap all this up by saying, okay, let's say someone did that questionnaire or they're listening to everything we're saying there and they're like, oh man, actually, I think I do need some more support. Like, what are typically next steps? How can people
Yeah.
help or improve their relationship with exercise? Maybe it's kind of starting with the nutrition end. Like, how would you kind of go about that? And I mean, of course, everyone's different, and I know there's a team approach here, but maybe we can wrap this up with that.
And people have different varying levels of access too.
Yeah.
If you have access to an eating disorder informed sports dietitian, I think that's a great place to start, because it's very likely that there's some food stuff involved if you find yourself scoring pretty high on this. It's very possible. And that's in those, I'm biased obviously because I'm an eating disorder informed sports dietitian. Claire is too. But but we also know the therapists that are really good at this type of thing. So you could call someone and get some referrals there. You can look for, I work with therapists who do this type of work, but I also ask her, I'm like, there's not, exercise dependence is not a diagnosis. What you would find in working with a therapist is someone who's really good at anxiety and compulsive behaviors. And so you might ask someone, if you've really worked with exercise dependence before, would you be willing to, have a couple sessions with me? So finding someone, and it's really like the diagnosis is usually by asking the therapist that I work with specifically for this, it could be OCD. It could be an anxiety disorder. It could be those types of things. So finding a therapist who's well-versed in those things would be good. You can talk to your family if you feel like you have really good support and say, I've realized that maybe I have been doing too much of this. What do you think? And of course, only open the door for family members that you feel really supported and you really value their opinion and you feel like they're someone you can be safely vulnerable with. That's something too. And to say like, hey, I'm really going to try to do this. And then that way you've got some support that is a partner, a sister, a really good friend that could check in on you, especially if you don't feel like you have access to a therapist or, a sports dietitian that has this level of or this type of experience. So those are definitely places to start. But I'm pro therapy. Like, as a baby dietitian, I was brought up by therapists who did a lot. I did a lot of training with them and supervision with them, and so most of the time we are using exercise as a coping tool because we maybe just don't have access to other ones, and a therapist can really help with opening the doors to access other tools or learning how to use other tools for that.
Yeah, no, for sure. And actually, one of my recent interviews with an athlete, we were talking about overcoming addiction, because especially in the ultra endurance space, there's a lot of, former addicts or, substance abuse or whatever. And then they kind of almost swap whatever 100%. They were addicted to for exercise. Right. And then it's like so normalized because it's, ultra running or whatever, and then, they're all out in the world of like the latest, biggest challenge where, it's really cool. It's admirable. The 200 miles, 300, whatever it is. Yeah. But then at a certain point, we also have to, that's where I was kind of going back to that, if you feel that you can do it question. It's like, where's the line? And we have to kind of investigate, like, how are they using exercise? And as you said, the intention, if they're fueling themselves and all of that. So it can definitely become tricky, especially where that word addiction, because we're using exercise dependence, but then we're also throwing that word addiction around. I don't know if there's anything more you want to say about kind of dependence versus addiction.
It really depends on the research camp that something came out of, right? It's in the addiction space. Because of what you just said, there are those who have had some type of substance use disorder who have then become sober or in recovery from that, who then have used exercise as coping, and that coping is as likely taken on a life of its own, where it's like, okay, well, this is my coping mechanism now, and it's better than this, no doubt. However, I still also might need some other things, so I don't have to have the drive for this compulsive exercise. And so it's kind of like, it's a harm reduction approach, but also it's that intention. So what are you using this for? Is this giving you the feeling that maybe, something in your substance use disorder times did And are there other things that we can put in that might give you, let's say, a better offering of coping tools? Because then we ask people, and I ask people this too, especially my super high endurance people, of like, if you were injured and you couldn't do this, what are you afraid of? And that question really needs to be asked before someone is really injured, because we need to give them the tools to handle the what am I afraid of? I'm afraid I'll go back to drinking. I'm afraid I'll do this. I'm afraid of whatever. Well, those are the tools we need to put in now, because it is highly unlikely that you're going to be an athlete at this level forever. So we really need you to have more tools than just this.
Yeah, I love that. Awesome, Leslie. This was so awesome. So great.
Well, thank you.
An important topic. And I really hope, I know the listeners will benefit from the way we kind of went about this and took them through that exercise. Is there anything else you want to add to the discussion? I feel like we covered it pretty well, but if there's anything you feel like you want to throw in there that you don't think we covered?
No, we didn't talk a lot about weight stigma and bias, but we talked a little bit about it, and it's something that I think that's what makes people have such a hard time feeling comfortable around body change, even though body change is inevitable for us. It's something that we really have to talk about and know that there's grief involved, and we covered that. Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, I wanted to ask you before we wrap up, working with Cirque du Soleil, what is that like? What does nutrition for performers like that look like? I imagine it's a lot of the same guiding sports nutrition principles, but are there any like nuances or specific things that you have to keep in mind? You mentioned the thing about weight and kind of the safety.
I will tell you, that was really quite the learning curve, because I miss like anti-diet sports dietitian coming in and like just super excited to work with them. And I worked with them from 2016 until COVID as a consultant directly for the company and the resident shows here. And then they stopped offering the support that they were having, and they haven't brought that back. So I work with people individually now, which is lovely. Because, I don't have to report to anyone. I can just help them.
Yeah.
So, I did really get humbled on the whole weight part of like, sometimes we do really have to keep it in mind from a safety reason. But also helping, sometimes people come in and working with me before they possibly get on a contract. And we're talking about how can we enter a contract as safe as possible in our bodies. And what people want to do is show up as small and restricted as possible. And that does not last long, I can tell you. But then you sign a contract there and you're kind of in trouble. So I feel like I've worked with people long enough in this arena to help them realize, like, show up as your best fed and watered self so you can maintain what you need to do, because the atmosphere, and not just Cirque, there are other companies and schools and things like that, but show up your best fed and watered self so you can really perform at the level that is asked of a lot of people. A lot of them are doing more than, they're doing at least 10 shows a week, which is a lot.
They're amazing. I've seen that show a couple times. It's crazy. And of course, the costumes are skin tight. So aesthetically, there's like pressure there.
There's so much.
That's got to be rough.
And it depends on the coach they're working with. You have coaches that just tell people they need to be a certain number, which, I've had plenty of words with those coaches. And we were really heading in a great direction pre-COVID, and we were doing lots of REDS training and fueling and all of that. And then, COVID changed a lot of things for across the world and entertainment, which is what it is, which most professional sports are entertainment. So, we really talk about, which I've loved that it's evolved into, like, people are like, I know I'm not doing this forever. So how do I protect myself now doing what I'm doing now? And knowing that I want to be well when I'm no longer doing this. And so it's a balance, and the other thing is, like, I've worked with people who are a lot of the show in harnesses. And so, strategies around fueling really, really, I would tell you every single Cirque person I've worked with has heard me say, we better front load.
Yeah.
We better front load your day because
Yeah.
when you're into shows and you're in a harness, it's not the time to have the bean burrito. It's not the time. So we really talk strategy, and you've got people spinning, and you've got people upside down, and you've got people doing all the things and swimming and diving and all the things, depending on the show. And then in costume and costume changes, and then in makeup, and then we have strategies around, can we eat in makeup, and what can we eat in makeup? It's a lot. It's a lot to learn. And so, but each one is different because there's so many different types of performers and athletes. So we just figure out like, what are your needs? And then how do we feed you? And it's usually helping people understand that you need to get most of your fuel in before you show up to work.
So hard. Yeah.
You got to get a lot in before you show up.
That's so interesting. Yeah. And I love whenever I get guests on who work with different kinds of athletes, like I've had someone on who works with Formula One, or I've had someone on who, whoever works with climbers, or, it's just not my core audience. Like, it's just so fun to hear about it and how different people feel themselves. And as you said, like, if your body in motion, you're at risk, but it's like, if your body in motion, you got to fuel yourself. Right. So, and then of course there'll be all these very specific differences, but at the end of the day, you still need to get it in. So it's always fun to hear about that. So thank you for sharing. That's awesome.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Well, Leslie, how can everyone, follow along, get your books, work with you, however, maybe they want to join your group, give everyone all the info.
Yeah. Well, you can find pretty much everything at leslieschilling.com or schillingnutrition.com. They lead you to the same place. On the socials, I really am on Instagram, which is Leslie Schilling. I don't do a lot of the other stuff because, I only have so much bandwidth. But my most recent book is Feed Yourself. And it is about how diet culture shows up in the safe places like churches, medical offices, homes, schools, and it does have it's faith aligned, but not super heavy, because I've worked with a lot of people who have been harmed in faith spaces.
I'm Jewish, and I can tell you it shows up in synagogues too.
I'd say most of my clients over the years that have brought that to the table have been Jewish or Mormon or evangelical Christian in the United States. So those are the ones that. So yes, it's so that was written with that in mind, about like how we can sometimes use sacred text to harm a body unknowingly, and hopefully we can step out of that. So that's what that book is about. But yeah, it's available everywhere books are sold, and I read it on Audible, Spotify, wherever.
Yes, that was an audiobook. I was like, oh, I got to grab that. So
yes, it's an audio, and it's somewhere between 5 and 6 hours. If you're like me, I can listen to something really fast. My daughter's like, that sounds like a chipmunk. How do you listen to that? So, but yeah, that's available. But yeah, just Leslie Schilling on Instagram or my website. That'll take you wherever you need. And if you're a dietitian, on the website, you can go to the professional tab and see the Dietitian Development Hub, which is an online supervision or consultation community. And then I also do groups for dietitians who work at this intersection.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Leslie. This was awesome.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
You too.
All right. That is our show for today. Thank you so much for listening. If you are enjoying this podcast, do make sure you follow, subscribe, so you don't miss an episode. I'd also be so grateful if you could share it on social media or with a friend, and rate and review it wherever you get your shows, as it helps my podcast be found and continue to grow. If you'd like to support my free content, you can check out my affiliate codes on the shop page of eatforendurance.com, and you can also buy my fueling-themed stickers linked in the show notes. And finally, I always love hearing from you guys, whether it's feedback, topic requests, or just to say hi, especially as we get into the new year and looking ahead. If you have certain guests you want me to interview, since I am still lining up interviews, do let me know. I would absolutely love to hear from you. All right. Thanks so much for listening. I will see you all next time.